Hello and welcome to Around the Nation here on TYT Nation. It is Monday, and you know what that means. We're back. We've got a lot of important political stories in order to share with you today. We've got a lot of important things. Talking about minimum wage, of course. When do I not talk about minimum wage? We've got Ted Cruz trying to ignore reality on the Sunday shows. That's amusing at best. More disastrous news on SNAP. McCain goes up against the Arizona GOP, and we've got more stories. A lot of fun. A lot of good stories. Thank you for tuning in. We're going to get to that here in just a minute. Let me get everything ready. Boom. All right. So we'll start out here with our first story, and that's, of course, the fight for fair wages. Now, there may be some good news for the millions of people that are currently making the federal minimum wage of about $7.25. Now, the AP reports that in at least 30 states, Democrats are actually starting to push wage increases in the run-up for 2014. That's pretty good news. Now, there are states like New Hampshire, Washington, Rhode Island, just among many that have introduced or will introduce legislation in order to raise the wages. That's fantastic. There are even measures in Republican-controlled states like Utah, which seeks to raise their wage to about $8.25. It's a start. Alabama, that would actually add a constitutional amendment to raise the wage to $9.80, and at the beginning of 2016. And Florida, that would raise their minimum wage to $10.10. Now, this is Republican states, so it's happening. The push is happening in the Republicans' backyard from Democratic lawmakers. Now, you should take that with, of course, with some caution, because it is in the Republicans' backyard. They're not likely to pass, but I'll get into the politics of that later. But get this, Vermont, home of Bernie Sanders, one of my favorite congressmen, has actually introduced or will introduce a bill that could raise the minimum wage to $12.50 by 2015 and peg it to inflation. Look at Vermont, man. You want a progressive state, Vermont's the place to go. So, now, of course, like I said, many of these have only been introduced or will be introduced, so don't get too excited. In fact, I'm pretty sure I said this before, the minimum wage is just a smart issue politically. And, if you were to latch onto this as a Democratic lawmaker, it's really smart. Not only is it good policy, it's good politically, too. Now, Americans overwhelmingly support increasing the minimum wage, and that, of course, includes Republicans. A majority of Republicans, 53%, in one of the last polls, I believe it was a Quinnipiac poll that was taken just last week, shows that 53% of Republicans want to raise the minimum wage. That's a lot of support. Not only that, but you've got, of course, a majority of Democrats, obviously independents. They all want to raise the minimum wage. And so, since 2014 is coming close, you've got all these Democrats that are out there pushing the bills. Now, of course, let's be real. It is political. For the most part, it's political. Now, do I think that there are certain state lawmakers that do care about the plight of people making minimum wage? Of course. Of course. Not all of them are 100% cynical, especially when you're talking about the state level. They're not all corrupt at the state level. You get to the national level, well, that's a different story for a different day. But, like I said, this is an election year, 2014. And so, around this time, I tend to become a little bit more cynical, because that's exactly what it is. They're playing politics, and politics is politics. And, of course, these politicians, they know that. They know that this is a winning issue, but nonetheless, maybe from their politics we can actually see something policy-wise, and that would be a victory. Now, according to Neil Sroka, who's a strategist for a progressive group, said on this issue, quote, "It's a no-brainer for any Democrat." Of course, of course, of course. He continues, quote, Congress is failing. They can take real action right in the states and have a demonstrable impact right here at home. For politics and policy, it's a winning strategy. So politically, it's great, and it's good policy, like I said, and income inequality is a huge, huge issue. I know because I look at it, I talk about it all the time ad infinitum, but I think it's one of the more defining problems of our time. The other, of course, being money and politics, and it's not a stretch to say that these two things are really related, because they are. Now, it's not like that there isn't a reason for this inequality. It's not as if we can't afford to raise those wages for people. It is the greed that's stopping this. The multinationals actually keep the wages low so they can keep their corporate profits high. You see how this works? Low wages, higher corporate profits, higher executive bonuses, huge stock buybacks. I mean, it's all around us. According to Jan Hatzius, who was a chief economist at Goldman Sachs, he said, quote, the strength in profits is directly related to the weakness in hourly wages. Well, let me show you this. Now look at that. U.S. corporate profits, do you see after the recession, picked right up. But when it comes to everything else, as far as employee wages, look at that. Wages down, corporate profits up. That's not an accident. And you can see that. And do you notice a pattern? The only trickle down going on here when corporate profits go up is the trickle down on your head. That money's not coming back to you. That money's going straight into corporate profits, executive bonuses. And I've shown you the productivity chart before. Americans are more productive than they ever have been. But the wages are not going to you. And so if you buy into that business can't afford to pay the minimum wage line, just remember, 2/3 of all minimum wage workers work at actually the largest, most profitable corporations that have posted in the last few years record profits since the so-called recovery. So when they tell you that, they're lying to you. And they're using their paid lackeys in Congress to continue stealing the fruits of your hard work. And that's not right. We got to do something about that. The first step, I think, would be to raise the wages. All right. And head into our next story here. I feel like I'm on a bit of a roll. So Ted Cruz was on Face the Nation Sunday to talk about President Obama's upcoming State of the Union speech. Well, this will be good. Now, in the course of that interview, Ted Cruz managed to hit pretty much all the different talking points from the Republicans. That would be IRS, Benghazi, and Obamacare. Oh, lovely. Check out this clip from his appearance on Face the Nation. You will be amused.
Senator, thank you for coming. You have already released a list of issues you want the president to address in his State of the Union speech, including you want a new investigation into the Benghazi controversy and into the IRS. You want him to admit that his economic program has failed, that it was a mistake to pass Obamacare on a party line vote. Senator, that sounds like you want a confession, not a speech.
Yep. Confession, not a speech. You see that though? Well, let's look into let's look into Benghazi just a little bit more, as if our investigation hasn't already wasted enough time and money. Did you see what they're doing? They're politicizing the deaths of 4 people in Benghazi, including our ambassador. And they just keep on harping on it. There's no evidence of a conspiracy, but of course, that does not stop people like Darrell Issa and the Republicans from continuing to harp on Benghazi. Well, what about the IRS? Oh, right, the IRS. That was a Bush appointee. Actually, did you know that? There was a Bush appointee that in the IRS, and he was the one that actually looked, he was a Republican, and he looked into both liberal and conservative groups. Which, by the way, all the conservative groups that were screened, none of them were stopped. But there was one group that was. That was a Democratic group, a liberal group. Wow, what a conspiracy. That actually helped Republicans. Conspiracy. All right, so what do they got him on? I know. Obamacare. Passed it by a party line vote. We got you. We got you, Democrats. We got you. Passed party legislation by a party line. As if they haven't. The Republicans have never done that before. Really? Now, Ted Cruz actually does go and mention some important points that I do think we should focus on, especially in this State of the Union speech. That's, of course, the low labor participation rate. I mean, that is a problem. We do have a low labor participation rate. We've got a lot of people out of jobs who are looking for jobs. We've also got income inequality, jobs and economic growth. You know, those are pretty much all related, by the way, to income inequality. But what he doesn't mention is how he and the Republican Party have pretty much blocked all or most initiatives to actually try and do something about those things, which even though some of those initiatives are undoubtedly sort of weak sauce, at least it would have helped the situation. And, of course, they would block things like the minimum wage and even at the state level, blocking the expansion of Medicaid, which would help millions of people, especially in things like, well, I don't know, income inequality. So, speaking of course, the ACA, Bob Schieffer actually brought up the shutdown over the ACA. Now check this out.
Let me ask you this. You became a celebrity when you led the drive to shut down the government over Obamacare. But afterward, your fellow Republicans said you led them over a cliff. Can you conceive of any situation in which you would do that again, try to shut down the government in exchange or in demand for some action by the president?
Well, Bob, with all due respect, I don't agree with the premise of your question. Throughout the government shutdown, I opposed a government shutdown. I said we shouldn't shut the government down. I think it was a mistake that President Obama and the Democrats shut the government down.
Oh, okay, so it wasn't my fault. I didn't want to shut the government down. I wanted to keep it open. No, it's President Obama. It's all Obama's fault. Of course. It wasn't me. But of course I don't think that Bob Schieffer was exactly buying that little explanation from Ted Cruz on his answer, and he continues to press him.
Fall.
All right, let me go back to one thing, and the question I asked you was, would you ever conceive of threatening to shut down the government again?
Well, as I said, I didn't threaten to shut down the government the last time. I don't think we should ever shut down the government. I repeatedly voted to fund the federal government.
Senator, if you didn't threaten to shut down the government, who was it that did? I mean, but we'll go on to something else. It was
Harry Reid and President Obama. But Bob, look, I understand.
It was Harry Reid and President Obama. Of course. All right, well, it's pretty obvious that obviously Ted Cruz had absolutely no intention to shut down the government. Well, of course not.
62 days from now, on September 30th, the continuing resolution expires, which funds the federal government. Now, I have publicly stated, along with Senator Mike Lee and Senator Marco Rubio and a number of others, that under no circumstances will I support a continuing resolution that funds even 1 penny of Obamacare. In order to win this fight, we need to get 41 Republicans in the Senate to make the same commitment, or we need 218 Republicans in the House. What I think should happen, I think the House of Representatives should pass a continuing resolution that funds the entirety of the federal government, every aspect of the federal government, except and that explicitly prohibits any funding going to Obamacare, that picks up the language on the legislation I've admitted to defund Obamacare and attaches it to the continuing resolution.
Oops. There was Ted Cruz actually outlining his plan to either have President Obama defund his signature resolution, which he absolutely knew that that wouldn't happen, or else he would shut down the government. Well, okay, so maybe you're thinking, well, now obviously after this whole thing, Cruz learned his lesson, right? He's about shutting down the government, and now he's obviously feeling bad about it. Maybe going back a little?
But if you read the New York Times, they will tell you that this battle accomplished nothing. Let me tell you, I think collectively we accomplished a great deal.
We accomplished a lot. Really? What did you accomplish with this government shutdown, Ted? Pretty much nothing. Your party is down the shitter when it comes to approval ratings, and you wasted about $24 billion on shutting down the government for nothing? And now you're trying to rewrite history about it? Saying, no, I was never for shutting down the government. Never. This guy lives in an alternate reality. He's not on this planet. He's not here with you and me. Look, here's what Ted Cruz is. Okay, Ted Cruz is an opportunist above all. Well, he's a politician. But he's made millions and millions of dollars off this shutdown. And now, of course, like I mentioned, he's trying to rewrite history. Say, no, I was totally against the shutdown, except for when I was for it. Perhaps he thought, or perhaps he forgot that we have these things called video cameras, where we can record everything that you say and play it back. Maybe he forgot about that. Well, look, here's what you got to remember. I'm sorry, here's what you got to do. The sooner people wake up and realize that politicians like Ted Cruz don't actually care about you. If you're a constituent of Ted Cruz and you think this guy cares about you, you need to wake up. Because he does not. He does not care about you. He cares about his own political career, like most politicians. And he cares about the money. And as soon as you guys realize that and stop backing candidates who say that they're the change candidate, and I know it's ironic because guess who was also the change candidate? As soon as you realize that they're all politicians out in a corrupt system, the better off Americans are going to be, and America is going to be. Because then we can actually do something about it. All right, I'm going to take a quick break. I will be back. I've got another great story. Sort of minimum wage-ish and food snap related. Trust me, it's going to be great. We'll be back shortly. All right. Back and around the nation, TYT Nation. Got some great stories. Thank you guys for tuning in. In case you have just tuned in, we're about halfway through our stories. I got about 3 more excellent news articles to go over with you. So, like I said, I'm just not going to waste any time. We're going to get right into it. So, we've had a little bit of disastrous news as of late. Turns out that working age people now make up the majority of food stamp recipients in the United States. Now, according to a new analysis done by the University of Kentucky, 1 in 7 Americans now have to rely on the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, otherwise known as SNAP, in order to survive. Now, according to the data, the increase is due in part to some changing demographics. Essentially, younger people are holding off from starting families, but mainly, this is due to the slow recovery, stagnant wages, and high income inequality, and of course, the lack of good-paying jobs. Now, according to some economists, and this is something I've been saying a lot, having a job may no longer be enough for self-sufficiency in today's economy. Of course. According to economics professor Timothy Smeeding, quote, a low-wage job supplemented with food stamps is becoming more common for the working poor. Now remember that phrase, working poor. That's what a lot of people don't seem to get it when they think of people on food stamps, that they are working but are still poor, working poor. Put it together. All right. Quote, many of the U.S. jobs now being created are low or minimum wage, part-time, or in areas such as retail or fast food, which means food stamp use will stay high for some time even after unemployment improves. Because what good is having a part-time job that cannot pay the bills? And that's what so many people are going through. When they have to work so hard but don't get enough money, they have to go on food stamps because they can't make up the shortfall with their jobs, sometimes pulling 2 or 3 jobs, and still can't make the rent, and still can't afford food without government assistance. And look, I see the argument around, okay? When I read the comments or when I go through and read other articles, I see the arguments that it's either just lazy people who are poor because they're lazy, which is obviously untrue. Working poor, after all, okay? Many of these people do work, or that it's just so easy to get food stamps, which I think is ridiculous. It is not easy to get food stamps. Unless you've been in the program before, you have no idea how it works. They do a lot of means testing when it comes to applying for SNAP. They have to know everything. They have to go through your bank accounts. They have to know how much money you have, how many assets you have. It's a mean-tested program. And it's not easy to get it. And that's one of the problems with it, is that you have... Let me try to explain this as easily as I can. Is that every time you improve, if you're on that system right now, every step that you take to improve yourselves, say you get a little bit higher paying job or get a second job, they will take back benefits, which can essentially throw you back into poverty. So, that's sort of the problem. You take one step forward, they bring back one step back. So, it's very difficult for people to get out of poverty once they're actually in it. And so, the whole point, though, is that right now, working isn't enough to be able to live on your own. Now, remember, low-wage jobs are not all the jobs at McDonald's. Home health care aides actually make up a lot of people on minimum wage. Pew's Research had a great study in 2012 that listed the occupational groups that make the minimum wage and how many people worked in those fields. So there's a lot of different fields that are minimum wage fields. And some of these jobs are really, really important. Do you know that an EMT will often start out, depending on where you are, at minimum wage? An EMT. You know how much training it takes to be an EMT? A lot. Automotive service technicians also start out at minimum wage. Child care providers, CNAs, highly trained jobs. All of these people could be on food stamps or could have been at some point in their lives trying to become the CNA or just starting out. And it's because their pay is so low. Remember that when you hear someone say that only fast food workers or people working at Walmart make the minimum wage, remember those. Remember those jobs that do make the minimum wage. They're not all people working at Walmart and McDonald's. These people have an education. In fact, breaking down that stat a little bit more, 28% of all food stamp households are headed by a person with some college education. Now, this is a little bit better, but still bad compared to what it was. 7% have a 4-year degree. That is up from 3%. And that, my friends, is because of the recession that we have still not recovered from. What recovery? Why? Well, it's because there are a lot of the good jobs are gone. And you also have, of course, the declining presence of unions. Very, very few people are unionized now, especially when it comes to the private sector. Low unionization leads to lower wages. Higher economic inequality. Higher economic inequality leads to lower wages. And of course, the lack of high-paying jobs in the first place that have been outsourced have basically made it so that a lot of these students, these college students that have graduated, some with 2-year degrees, some with 4-year degrees, to have to go and get a job at McDonald's or another low-wage job. And now, there's another issue to this, of course, and that's the fact that we're subsidizing these low-wage employers with food stamps. Everyone, whether you're conservative, liberal, libertarian, independent, doesn't matter. You should be outraged that these companies can get away with being the most profitable they've ever been simply because they don't pay their workers what they deserve to make. And so these workers have to get on public assistance just to survive. That right there is taking advantage of the taxpayer. You want to talk about welfare queen? That right there is a welfare queen. Sucking off the system so you can make an extra buck. That is a welfare queen. And it's not regular people, it's the corporations, the multinationals, the Walmarts and the McDonald's of the world. Those are your welfare queens. So what are the solutions? Where are they? Who has any solutions? All I see are Republicans trying to cut food stamps while simultaneously trying to block every minimum wage increase that comes across their desk. Hey, dumbasses. If you raise the wages, there will actually be less people on government assistance. Yeah, less people will need food stamps. And the very few jobs that actually might be lost by this, by an increase in the minimum wage, will be offset, made up by the majority of people that will actually be off government assistance and will actually have money in their pockets to spend, which will create jobs. It's just sad to see that our, welfare queen corporations and their cronies in Congress continue to ignore this issue and allow people that work hard, to have to rely on government benefits to survive. That's not the way America should be. America should be you work hard, you succeed. But we've gotten away from that. Now it seems the less you work, or the more you're connected, maybe to somebody in high finance, the more successful you're going to be. And that's just a shame. All right. Moving on. Got a little bit of Republican on Republican crime. That's always fun. My question, of course, today is John McCain too liberal? Is John McCain too liberal? Apparently the Arizona GOP thinks so. What? The Associated Press reported last week that John McCain had actually been formally censured by his home state's Republican Party, citing a voting record that is, quote, insufficiently conservative. To which I have to say, what the fuck? John McCain too liberal? According to the resolution that was passed, McCain has campaigned as a conservative, but has lent his support to issues associated with liberal Democrats, such as immigration reform and funding Obamacare. Lending his support. No, I've never seen an instance where John McCain has actually said, oh yeah, Obamacare is great. You should sign up. No, absolutely not. In fact, John McCain has actually gone out of his way to praise the people that did the government shutdown over Obamacare. Yes, he praised the effort to shut down the government. Although he later came back and said, look, it wasn't exactly worth it, but hey, good try anyway, guys. Good try. That's considered endorsing Obamacare? I guess if you're going by fruitcake standards. In a September interview with Jake Tapper, McCain actually told Tapper that, quote, in the United States Senate, we will not repeal or defund Obamacare. We will not, and to think we can is not rational. Wow, look at that flamin' lib, John McCain. Man, he is borderline socialist with all that talk. Look, he's not supporting the law. He just thought that it was stupid to try to shut down the government for it. That's not being liberal. That's just called not being a complete moron. I mean, especially politically. We saw how much that hurt the Republicans. But look, not all Republicans, of course, think John McCain is too liberal. This was done by a crazy fringe in the Arizona GOP. It doesn't represent all Republicans. In fact, John Kyle, former Senator John Kyle, very conservative former senator, he actually told the Arizona Republican that, that's a newspaper, that the censure was, quote, wacky. I've gone to dozens of these meetings, and every now and then, some wacky resolution gets passed. But most people realize it does not represent the majority of the vast numbers of Republicans. Well said. Well said. It's just kind of funny that only in Arizona can John McCain actually be too liberal. I'm going to take another quick break. I'm going to take another quick break. I'll be back. Final story. I'm actually getting done way, way ahead of time, which is really strange. So I'll be back with the final story. Just give me another quick break. All right, back and around the nation. Thank you guys for sticking with me with this just a little slightly more than a half hour. I apologize. I figured I had enough content for today. That's all right. We've got one more fairly quick story to get through. But first, of course, for you guys that are watching, thank you guys for watching. For one, if you guys do want to support the show, maybe help me get an intern or something, or hire a producer, you could always go to our Patreon campaign, patreon.com/TYT Nation. We now have 4 patrons that are supporting the show. Donate whatever you would like. It all goes to helping me improve the show. And trust me, I don't spend it on beer. I wish I could, but I don't. All right. So back to the show. This is kind of a bizarre story. A little bit. Now, Republican Representative Mike Turner of Oklahoma thinks that giving gay people the right to marry in his state will be such a horrible thing that he's willing to go to extremes to prevent that from happening. Now, to give you a little bit of context in this, just recently a federal judge ruled that Oklahoma's ban on same-sex marriage is unconstitutional. You can't do that. You can't discriminate. You can't ban same-sex marriage in your state. And, of course, that goes back to the DOMA ruling back in the summer. And this, of course, means that same-sex marriages may actually be coming to Oklahoma in the future. Right now, the federal judge has put a stay on new marriages. So, no, not everybody in Oklahoma is rushing to get a gay marriage. At least not yet. We hope that will be the case soon. Still, that does not sit well with Republicans like Mike Turner, who, like I said, are so afraid of same-sex marriage that they've decided that the only way to save marriage from those gays is to kill it altogether. That's right. Mike Turner wants to ban all marriage in Oklahoma. Oh, gay people can get married? Not on my watch, sir. Not on my watch. Not going to happen. Now, in an interview with News9.com, Mike Turner has stated that, quote, my constituents are willing to have that discussion about whether marriage needs to be regulated by the state at all. And he's not the only one. Other lawmakers have said that they, quote, envision a state that doesn't recognize any marriages at all. Now, to be fair, there are people out there that think that the government shouldn't be involved in the institution of marriage, in the business of marriage at all, or to give out tax breaks to families and things. And of course, that's fine, because they're coming at it from principle. They're coming at it from a principle. Well, government just shouldn't get involved. Everybody should be equal. But this guy in Oklahoma, it's really not principled, in my opinion. He just thinks that, well, if I can't tell you what type of marriage you can have, then I'm going to make it so that nobody gets married. It's my way or the highway, buddy. I just don't think that's not really principled. That's just called being an ass. Now, of course, this thing's pretty unlikely to pass, but it shows the depths that some people will actually go to prevent actual social progress. And to make a pretty good straw man argument, too. Look at those gay people. They just wrecked everybody's marriage. Would you believe that? Those gay people just wrecked your marriage. They wrecked everybody's marriage. See? Gay marriage does kill traditional marriage. It's ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. Now, Representative Turner is actually making the argument, and get this, he's making the argument that this defends the Constitution while keeping same-sex marriage illegal. Well, we're treating everyone equally after all. We're just equally saying that nobody can get married or get any sort of marriage benefits. And this is really him saying, this is my way to keep my bigotry constitutional. And I get to point the finger at gay people for taking away the rights and benefits of marriage from all the other people of Oklahoma. So much for the party of family values. What's more family values then banning all marriage, just to prevent them gays from actually having the same rights that you and I, straight people, enjoy. Way to go, Oklahoma. Way to go. All right. Well, thank you for joining me here, of course, on Around the Nation, here on TYT Nation. Make sure to subscribe to us, youtube.com/TYT Nation. Check out some of our other shows here on the channel, TYT Community, Around the Nation. We've got the David Sparks Show. He does some really good stuff. We've got all sorts of different shows here on the TYT Nation channel, and you can be a part of it too. Just go ahead and send your video, upload.theyoungturks.com, and you can have a show on TYT Nation as well. And as far as I'm concerned, I will be back here on Wednesday with more fantastic stories. Make sure to tune in, 5 p.m. Eastern. And we'll go probably to about 6 p.m., hopefully, if we have enough stories. Until then, I will see you later. You have a fantastic day. Bye.